It was a wild Tuesday for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mistakes galore. Mike Tomlin's feed went out, and we found out there was a mistake with the depth chart, but also some awesome stuff with Franco Harris getting his jersey retired. I'll talk to Jason Mackey of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette right here on this show. We'll also talk about a deep dive story that he's done about Chris Boswell, a person we don't hear too much from in the media, and we'll get you a look at the top 25 rankings, where Pitt and Penn State are with the Associated Press, and of course, with the Pittsburgh Steelers, their season prediction. Is it too high? Is it too low? All that right here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Let's get into it.
You are now listening to the North Shore Drive podcast, a show on all things Pittsburgh sports from the writers of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, hosted by Christopher Carter.
All right, I'm Chris Carter here from the North Shore Drive podcast. It's the Wednesday edition of the show. We are joined by Jason Mackey. My first time doing a show where I'm hosting. He brought me on the radio this weekend on 93.7 The Fan. Now I'm returning the favor. We're doing this show here. Jason, how you doing? Looks like you're up in the Pirates press box.
I am, man. Good to have you, or good to be on here with you, Chris. Thank you for having me. Yes, I am at PNC Park. I tried to find a quieter room, but we'll make do, and I'll do the best I can. The Pirates are taking batting practice right now. The Mets are in town. Rain day yesterday, but good to see they're back on the field today. Have one today, one Tuesday, and then a doubleheader Wednesday. So get a little baseball, man. A little my old stomping grounds. I like it.
I'll just say, watch out for O'Neal Cruz's exit velocity. I just don't want it to hit you up there. But let's dive into what happened today for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Franco Harris, awesome. We'll get to that in a second. But how about the Steelers come out with a depth chart the day after they released their initial depth chart, and Kenny Pickett is moved to the second spot at quarterback. He was in the third spot on Monday when it was released, and it's a flip-flop for Mason Rudolph. Immediately, Twitter goes crazy. Like, wow, Kenny Pickett just had the greatest practice of all time to bump himself up. And I'm sitting there like, oh, gosh, no, that was just a mistake, wasn't it? Someone just messed up. And sure enough, Mike Tomlin says it's a clerical error. Jason, it's not that big a deal in my book, but it's just watching Twitter implode on between Monday and Tuesday watching it just seemed like it was something else about this quarterback situation.
Chris, I'm curious if this isn't a trial balloon, and nobody will ever admit it. And it's like it's a conspiracy theory to me because, okay, you make a clerical error. I understand. They all happen. We've all turned in papers with mistakes and stories and whatever. But why not change it? An hour later, you have to be aware of what the reaction is to, oh my God, why is Kenny Pickett third? Why is Mason Rudolph second? Like, you're not numb to it. And if you're not aware of it, somebody is going to alert you to it. Mm-hmm. That's the crazy part for me. And then they didn't choose to do anything to react to it and say, oh, wait, there's been a mistake until today. Like, my thought was, they were honestly going to take Mason Rudolph as the backup into Cincinnati, and then it got people so mad that they're like, all right, well, we really weren't going to roll with that for that long. Let's just flip it. We'll say it was a clerical error. People won't remember. It's really no harm, no foul. I can't how do you allow a clerical error to occupy? Agree. It came out I don't know when the announcement was today, but I know it was 4:00 yesterday because I was preparing for a show on the Fan, and I wound up doing like 90 minutes on this entire topic, and which is a separate conversation into itself. But they didn't correct it until this morning at 10 a.m., 11 a.m., something like that before Tomlin talked. I'm amazed that it lasted that long.
I'm amazed, too, that it lasted long. But someone brought up a really interesting theory, and this one seems to be the most plausible conspiracy theory. There's always been the talk that the Steelers want to move Mason Rudolph, right? They want to trade him. What if there was like a late-night proposal, like they were trying to convince another team to take him, and they would say, he is our second quarterback. See? He's second on the depth chart. And then whatever team they were talking to was like, nah, we're not going for it. And then the Steelers were like, okay, we're sorry. We're gonna tell the truth now. Maybe that happened. I also believe things like this happen. And a friend of mine, Tony Serino, brought up on Twitter. He's like, back in 2020, the Steelers had a clerical error that made them miss a person on their 48 man roster of active players for a game. This kind of stuff does happen, but it's bizarre that it happens, and in that, like you said, it took so long for them to correct.
Yeah, I don't think it's weird that it happened. Like, honestly, like, it can just be an honest mistake, or you were moving things back. I don't begrudge it happening whatsoever. I take into question how long it took to fix the mistake. That's the thing that I don't necessarily understand or agree with. I mean, there just has to be something there. And I get what you're saying about a trade, and I think there might be some smoke to that too. I mean, it's one of the two, in my opinion, but maybe you were close on a trade, and maybe you just wanted to put Mason Rudolph, say, we're going to release our depth chart. This is going to get a bunch of attention. We're going to see that Mason Rudolph is second. Maybe somebody will bite. Maybe somebody that didn't really know, okay, well, Mason Rudolph beat out Kenny Pickett. Like, he's had a really good camp. Clearly, the Steelers feel that way. And then when nobody gave them what they wanted. They're like, all right, well, this is, what you're saying. We'll tell the truth now. We'll really put out our depth chart, and we'll just say it's a clerical error. Again, I hate to be the conspiracy theorist guy, but I'm going to be the conspiracy theorist guy.
I feel you. You can only help but be in that situation. But let's give at least a couple minutes to the other story that happened with the Steelers. Art Rooney, of course, announced Monday. There was an announcement by the Steelers Monday that, hey, Art Rooney is going to talk after, an hour after the Mike Tomlin press conference. Everyone's like, what could it be? And I loved this speculation as well. Steelers fans were, oh, does this mean Mike Tomlin stepping down? Is that what's really going on here? Is he going to announce he's stepping down and then Brian Flores is stepping up? All the craziness was happening. And I was just sitting there like, oh my gosh, you people make my brain hurt. But it is, as someone pointed out, I think with Jeff Hathorn on 93.7 The Fan, I thought he was the first person to say, hey, y'all, the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception is this year. Maybe this has something to do with Franco Harris. And I was like, I could buy that. And sure enough, he was on the money, because in rolls Franco Harris, his son Doc, his wife, and they get to say, hey, we're retiring Franco's jersey, an awesome thing for them. And they're going to do it in the halftime of the Raiders game, which is on the week of the anniversary of the Immaculate Reception. So really awesome moment there for Franco Harris, a legend in all of sports, especially Pittsburgh sports. And I thought it was a cool thing for them to acknowledge him. He's the first offensive player to have their jersey retired by the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's crazy, but this has become more of an honor than the Hall of Fame at this point.
Yeah, it really has. And I don't understand for the life of me, Chris. Maybe you can shed some more light into this, like why they don't retire more jerseys. And I realize you don't want to be like the Yankees, I guess, and have, so many of them retired, given how many legendary players they have. It just, or maybe they just don't have to. Maybe, people have the understanding and the reverence. I don't totally understand why 32 wasn't retired before, but, I dealt with this from a Pirates perspective. People look at it that the Pirates don't have a Hall of Fame. Why? Yeah. But that shouldn't stop you from doing it. So I would be hypocritical to, say something against Franco's number being retired. I mean, how can you look at it and say not that they shouldn't? Obviously, it's a slam dunk. I would retire that and probably 10 others. But, I understand maybe what they're doing with the anniversary of the Immaculate Reception. It should be a fantastic, event, gesture, whatever you want to say. I'm with you on the wild speculation too, man. Just like all the craziness that it could be. I mean, you have to think, like, Art Rooney's not going to call a press conference to say, like, I don't know, I'm selling the team, or we're firing Tomlin or something like that. Like, just settle down, use logic. Like, maybe it was like an additional part of Acrisure Stadium, or an additional, like, gesture that the Steelers would be making to fans. But I mean, the Franco Harris thing was pretty logical there. Like, that made sense.
It made a ton of sense. And honestly, it makes sense for a lot of guys. Terry Bradshaw deserves his jersey retired. No one's worn 12 since him. Jack Lambert, Jack Ham, Mel Blount, and even later guys. Dermontti Dawson, no one's worn 63 since him. Hines Ward, Troy Polamalu. Also, I forgot Mike Webster. And one thing I think that touched me the most about what Franco Harris said, he said it's nice to receive your flowers and smell them while you're still around. And that, to me, is something the Steelers shouldn't pass up with guys like both the Jack Lamberts and Hams, the Mel Blunts, and the guys of that crew that, hey, someday we want to honor them. Don't wait for someday. Get them their honors now so that you can celebrate them while they're here and they can have this great moment, before they unfortunately pass away. Just those guys are getting old.
Yeah, that's something I've lived on the Pirates beat, and them deciding to have a Hall of Fame. I mean, you have so many great players and great people in there, and names you need to induct, but a lot of people were understandably fired up that Dick Groat did not make it. that Vernon Law did not make it, that Elroy Face did not make it.
Yeah, man.
And I don't like it. I think a lot of people don't like it. These guys are 90-some years old. And, if you're going to say we're only going to put in our 10 best or something like that, and those guys don't make it, okay, fine. I get that. I would, but you put in 19, I feel like a lot of people say, well, 19, what's the difference between 19 and, 23? Because Barry Bonds, you can obviously make a case for that too. But to the point with Franco, and, I even think about this like Joe Walton Stadium. I remember doing a story on Joe Walton whenever Robert Morris, they named the stadium after him. And it's like, what was it like to have a stadium named after you while you were still alive? And it's kind of a weird thing, but at the same time, I get what Franco's saying. You want to enjoy that. It's no fun to happen just after you're dead, or at least I wouldn't think so. Not like I've ever had that happen to me, but I'm happy for Franco, man. He should get to take a victory lap. He should get to get that applause.
Absolutely. We got to talk about a player who's still here, and we don't get to talk about a lot. That's Chris Boswell. Jason's done some amazing work that you will see this weekend in the Post-Gazette's preview. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But first, we got to talk to you guys about our friends at MyBookie. As the Bills and Rams prepare to kick off the NFL regular season Thursday, now is the time to prepare for your winning season at MyBookie. Whether you're a veteran bettor or a first-timer, MyBookie gets you the most for your money with a double deposit bonus. It's quick and easy. A $250 deposit gets you $500 in your account, and you can use your funds to bet instantly on as many games, contests, and prop bets as you want. To claim your bonus, register today and use the promo code NSD for North Shore Drive, NSD, and it's designed to add more excitement to the games and sports that you love. Bet on the team win totals, predict the Super Bowl winner, or use the MyBookie prop builder to secure the bag. Your winning season begins today exclusively at MyBookie. And back here on the North Shore Drive podcast with Chris Carter, he's been Jason Mackey. We're here with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And Jason, I think that you took on a special endeavor that many journalists haven't gotten to do over the past several years. Chris Boswell, who has been one of the best kickers in Steelers history, and it's not crazy to say that. I actually was looking at his numbers. Compared to Hall of Fame kickers, he's doing better than most of them. He has better numbers than Adam Vinatieri, who should be in the Hall of Fame in the coming years. He's up there with Justin Tucker, who will be in the Hall of Fame when his career is said and done. And so, for those who don't know, Chris Boswell, he seems quiet because he is quiet. He don't talk to us. After a game's over, that guy is out of the locker room. He is not talking to media. But Jason, you got to break some things down about him. What was your first impression about why Chris Boswell just has this guard about him?
Yeah, so a couple different things with that. And one of it is he does legitimately dislike talking to the media. And it's nothing personal. I talked to his high school coach, his college SID, and his college coach, and they all said the same thing, that it's not that he dislikes media. He dislikes talking to the media. Like, the interaction for him is just unnatural, and he sort of doesn't like the attention being put on himself. And so they went on to tell me a bunch of different funny stories about his, sort of legend of not wanting to deal with media. At Rice, his freshman year, they wanted to mic him up. And somebody from the marketing department said, for practice, we want you to wear this microphone. He goes, well, okay, but I'm not going to talk. And they thought he was joking. And so they called his bluff. They're like, no. I mean, I'm sure you put the microphone on him, he's going to talk. Well, for 2 hours or whatever practice was, they didn't get any audio. He didn't say a single word to anybody. All they got was jersey ruffling and air blowing and whatever. And he's like, told you, I wasn't going to talk. And one time they convinced him to join his coach on this coach's show. They do a weekly coach's show. And so he goes up with the coach and somebody calls in as there's this big, long, profound question. And he sort of looks and goes, can you repeat that question, please? It borders on being a jerk if you didn't know that it was coming from a genuine place. He is a really good guy, and all of these guys just spoke glowingly about him. But no, he does not like the back and forth that you I need to, because it's responsible reporting, give him a chance to talk for this story. I'm going to be down there tomorrow to try to do that. I don't anticipate getting him. I don't anticipate him wanting to participate. I don't anticipate him wanting to take a victory lap. But it was really funny. There's a whole bunch of stories in this thing. I could go on and on in the podcast about, sort of previewing these stories. I'll give one, though. from his Rice coach. So I guess their practice field, there's like this ramp that goes down to their practice field. And so their coach, who was absolutely one of the best interviews in this story, David Bailiff is his name. So he's telling me he walks down to the end of this ramp, and at the end of the ramp, every single day, there's a football like whizzing by his face or his feet or something, and eventually he confronts Boswell. And Bailiff, by the way, named his dog Boz. Like, that's how much he likes Chris Boswell. He's not a jerk. He said, "Boss, what are you doing? Every day I walk down here, and I'm getting hit with a football." And Boz, "I don't know, Coach. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you." He's like, "Yeah, it's an awful big coincidence there, Boswell." But anyway, there's a whole bunch of stuff in there in that vein, like funny stories. I do feel like, Chris, like reporters, well, I shouldn't say it this way. It's just like that's been a get for me. I've wanted to try to crack that and write that profile and, get in there somewhere because he's so good, as you outlined, and we know nothing about him personally. But it's a lot of the story is about his ability to separate kicking. And, even when he went through some crap with kicking, like in 2018, he did not have a good year. He's been able to compartmentalize that, bounce back, overcome it, and he's got a neat story. So you can read about it when our preview stuff comes out.
Absolutely do check it out. And I think it's really interesting to see into the mind of this guy because Chris Boswell, outside of 1 year where we heard offhand that he was injured, he has been nigh perfect. Like he's just been right there, consistent. You don't see him waver in big moments. He still has the most kicks made in the history of a playoff game in the NFL. And so many games we think of now over the past, I'd say the past, 5 years, where it's just been kind of just forgotten. Oh, yeah, they made all their kicks in this game, and that's why they won. Steelers fans, often get spoiled by when a position gets really good, like Antonio Brown with the wide receiver position. That wasn't a concern for the team for a very long time until it became one when he left. Before Chris Boswell got there, and Sean Sweeten was good, but you see the tumult, the craziness of that situation, of how the Steelers kicker position can ruin an entire game, an entire season. Josh Scobie missing kicks against the Ravens, costing like those type of memories, but not this guy. This guy who doesn't talk to anybody, who has his own inside jokes, who does his own things. He just goes about his business. And it seems like the big moment, maybe the reason the spotlight never bothers him is because when it's on him, he doesn't think about it and he's just in his zone.
Yeah, that was another thing that his college SID was telling me, like a story from when Boz tried out. I guess, Boz they're having to make these kicks, and like James Harrison is rushing and screaming at him and doing everything he can to get him off his game. And Boswell's just, just doing his thing, just putting it through the uprights. There's another one where I guess Roethlisberger came up to Boz and it's like, what hash do you need it on? Where do you want the ball? He's like, I don't care. Just put it wherever. It's like he's no maintenance. He's no maintenance at all. He's just super plain. Chris, one of the stats as you were talking, I wanted to look this up because it fascinated me. So 2018 was that really bad season, right? He went 13 for 20. 65% was last among kickers with at least 20 attempts. Yeah. Since that, 84 of 91. 92.3%. I mean, when you talk about him being automatic, I mean, he has legitimately been automatic. He had a bad season and then has bounced back and has basically been the best kicker in the league. You can make an argument, obviously, for Justin Tucker, but Boswell has been simply incredible.
He absolutely is. I mean, now you said 92%?
92.3%. Yep, the past 3 seasons.
I want people to understand that that's a ridiculous percentage. I'm going to take it to another sport. Steph Curry, who is widely regarded as the greatest shooter in NBA history that we're watching right now, at the free throw line, not the three-point line, at the free throw line, he is 90.8%. Chris Boswell is better at kicking field goals than Steph Curry is at shooting free throws. That is ridiculous. And again, it details why I said I think this guy may have a chance to go to the Hall of Fame someday because of how that situation is looking right there. If you want to read more about Chris Boswell, you better check out the Steelers preview this weekend in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette because Jason Mackey has a heck of a story that he's put together, and you've only heard a few glimpses of it here on the North Shore Drive podcast. We'll talk more about the Steelers moving forward because there's a prediction that was laid out by Sports Illustrated that has some people talking, and we'll also talk about the top 25 rankings after Pitt's win and Penn State's win, where they both stand and where they might both go this year. We'll talk about that in just a minute here. But first, we got to tell you guys about our friends at YinzersPGH.com. Hey, Yinzers, listen up. The Steelers campaign is ready to roll, so show your support for our black and gold. It's easy. With 2 legendary shops in the Strip District, plus the growing online store, Yinzers in the Berg is the place to go for Pittsburgh sports apparel, accessories, and much, much more. We'll see you in the Strip, or check them out online. Shop YinzersPGH.com. That's YinzersPGH.com for all your Pittsburgh sports apparel. Back here on the North Shore Drive podcast. I'm Chris Carter. He's Jason Mackey. Now, we do apologize if there's sounds in the background, but hey, we're the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. We send people all the time. Jason's up in the press box getting ready to watch the Pirates take on the Mets. But we're not here to talk about the Pirates and the Mets. There's not going to be any Timmy Trumpet tonight because this isn't in New York. We're gonna talk, though, about a prediction that was laid out by Sports Illustrated about the Steelers season, and that's that they would go 6-11 on the season. And that would be the first time that Mike Tomlin has ever had a losing season. That would be the worst record that this team has had since 1998, I believe. If I was to know, 1998. And actually, it would be the worst record even before the Bill Cowher record, because the worst record they had under Bill Cowher was 6-10. So that's a crazy claim. It's not a crazy claim. It's a strong claim. But Jason, do you see that being a reality this year? Because everyone's wondering, can the Steelers float without Ben Roethlisberger?
Yeah, I don't see it, Chris. I don't see how we get there. I really don't. And I understand the concern about the offensive line or Devin Bush and the linebackers and depth and this, that, and the other. Like the quarterback play I watched in the preseason, the depth they have at wide receiver, having Najee Harris, what the defensive line should be able to do, what I think is actually a fairly decent secondary. I don't think it's porous by any stretch. Like, they have too much talent to me to be a 6-win team. Now, I'm not flipping this around and saying I think they're going to be 11-6, but that 6-11 prediction, I mean, the offensive line would have to be like historically bad. And I don't see that. Like, I understand they have not been good thus far, certainly not defending that, but like, can we really accurately make a prediction on what Mason Cole or James Daniels is going to be for this entire season based on the preseason? And I know I made a couple other baseball parallels earlier in this podcast. I'll make another one right now. Everybody would have predicted that Jose Quintana was going to stink this year based on what he did in spring training. The same for Tyler Anderson. It's the preseason. It's spring training. It's it's not real, whatever you want to call it, sport. Yeah. Again, I'm not saying that as a reason that I think the offensive line is going to be awesome. I still think, I still have concerns, but we can't decide, in my opinion, that they're automatically going to stink just because of a couple of preseason games. What do you think?
I'm in the same boat as you. I don't even think. Again, they won all their preseason games last time I checked. None of their quarterbacks threw an interception in the preseason games.
Fine point.
They've actually, the defense, yes, there's questions about the run defense still because we haven't seen them play in full. There's questions about the offensive line. But to me, that looks like a talented group. They've got a lot of skilled players on offense that I think a lot of people would fear. The defense is still stacked with a lot of playmakers, and I think better role players than people will give them credit for at the cornerback position and at the linebacker position with the addition of Miles Jack. And I think that Devin Bush will be better than people expect. This, to me, is a team I would not be surprised of a win total anywhere between 8 to 11. That's where I'm at. 8 is the lowest I'm willing to go. Maybe they get a losing season. Maybe that happens. But as far as the expectations, I would not be shocked if this team ended up with 10 wins and in the playoffs that way. Now, 12 wins, I would have a hard time seeing because this is a competitive schedule. This is a very competitive division. I could see them splitting with both the Ravens and the Bengals this year, maybe even the Browns because they play them once Deshaun Watson returns. But the rest of their games, this team will be competitive. This will not be a team that just gets blown out of the water. I think the offense will be better than last year. I think the defense will be better than last year, which is why I put them right in that position.
Yeah, I mean, I think this could be a half-decent offensive football team, Chris. I really do. I mean, like, George Pickens isn't suddenly going to be unable to do what he did in the preseason.
Right.
Deontay Johnson is a top-of-the-line, cream-of-the-crop wide receiver, I believe.
Yeah.
I've liked what I've seen so far from Chase Claypool. I think Pat Freiermuth can bust out and be like a Pro Bowl caliber tight end. Do I feel as warm and fuzzy about the offensive line? No, of course not. But
Right.
And as you said with the quarterbacks, like they've been able to survive despite all that. I like Mitch Trubisky's mobility. I like their ability to sort of figure it out. Maybe you're not able to run the ball one day. Okay, well, we'll split Najee out wide, find different ways to get the ball to the playmakers. Okay, you know, there are different ways to skin a cat, but 6-11 is so far and away bad. Like, and that sent me down the rabbit hole of like, when was the last time the Steelers finished like with 6 wins? And that would be 2003. I think you said that earlier, but you know, the last year pre-Ben. And I don't see this team being as inept as that one. Not that team was like horrible, but obviously didn't perform. The only thing I would think about is, you know, if they end up getting decimated by injuries, if just like an abnormal rash of injuries, stuff you cannot, you know, possibly predict. That's the only way I see that happening.
I see it the same way there. We got to talk about the AP Top 25 poll. It's the Week 2 poll. Coming after the first week of games here of Week 1, and of course Week 0 can also calculate into that. But the Pitt Panthers are still sitting at 17 despite their win against West Virginia, a Power 5 team. Penn State is the second leading vote getter of non-top 25 teams, which I guess technically would put them at 27 if you were doing it that way. But they had 122 votes to get them ranked in the Associated Press poll. But Pitt staying at 17, I think that's a really interesting spot for them because they got the job done against West Virginia. Had they blown out West Virginia, had they mauled them the way some of us were thinking they might have risen up the ranks a bit. But here they are at 17. I think that's a safe spot. And Pat Narduzzi even kind of said, hey, we've earned underdog status against number 24 Tennessee, which is what they got ranked going into this week. They've earned the underdog status for the way they played. What's your read on both of these programs? Are they ranked fairly right now? And where do you see both of them kind of heading as this season goes?
Yeah, Chris, I mean, I'm assuming you mean Pitt and Penn State.
Penn State. Yes,
like heading.
Sorry.
Yeah. So as far as Pitt, like I'm okay with where they're ranked. I'm a little surprised that they're like a legitimate underdog against Tennessee, especially at Acrisure Stadium. I'm not sure if that's warranted. I mean, I think we're grading that, I guess, a lot on like what kind of team you beat. And Tennessee beat Ball State 59-10, and Pitt 38-31 over West Virginia. And I don't think West Virginia is going to be all that bad this year. I think we're going to look at this thing at the end and be like, JT Daniels is pretty good. Like this team made some noise. This is not a bad football team. But anyway, so I'm fine with that. I just don't quite understand why Pitt is such a substantial underdog. And honestly, man, like I think Penn State gets in. I think Penn State beats Ohio pretty handily this weekend. And I think they're going to be a top 25 team as well. I like some of the talent they have there. I think their secondary is better than anticipated. Jair Brown, I don't know how much you've watched of them. He's fun. Obviously, they had to replace Brisker, but I've liked what he's done. Joey Porter Jr. is, going to end up being a pretty prominent draft pick.
Special.
Curtis Jacobs is special to watch. PJ Mustipher was quiet this past week, but I'm not expecting that to continue for long. Penn State, it's sort of funny. I wrote about this in 10 Thoughts. Like, they have some similar traits to Pitt. And then, like, we were picking apart what Pitt did running the football outside of Rodney Hammond Jr., not really getting much, and Penn State wasn't able to get a 100-yard back. But, like, they've got a couple interesting freshmen to me, like Nick Singleton, Katron Allen. Those guys can play. I mean, there's a lot of hype with them out there. The quarterback situation is a little strange. Sean Clifford there for another year. A lot of chatter over, like, wanting Drew Allar. But anyway, I guess it's a long-winded way of saying I like what Penn State has.
Yeah, I liked what they did. One thing that Pat Narduzzi said is it's good to lick your wounds after a win versus a loss. And sure, there were some moments where you're sitting there about Penn State and saying, in that last game, like this didn't go well. But the fact that they were able to gut it out, I think shows there is something there. And I think that, like you said, they handle their business against Ohio. They blow them out the way they're supposed to. The AP will reflect that. You're gonna see some tough ones this week where I think there's gonna be some teams that suffer some tough losses. Maybe Pitt's one of them, but hey, Pitt may be able to help Penn State. If they beat Tennessee, Tennessee could fall out of the top 25, and then there would only be two teams ahead of between Tennessee and Penn State to make them in the top 25. We'll see if that happens this weekend in college football. We've had a show where we've had a lot to talk about with the Steelers, Pitt, Penn State, all things football. We're going to get to more sports as the year goes on. But Jason, thank you so much for joining me here on the Wednesday edition of the North Shore Drive podcast. Let people know where they can find you, they can follow you, and let them know about some other things you might be working on.
All right, man. You can find me at PNC Park. Just listen for the loud music. Hopefully it wasn't too bad. At Twitter, at JMackeyPG. I don't know when my next fan hosting gig is. I think September 17th anyway. It's down there for a while. I will see you on Wednesday morning, I think, down at Pitt. Maybe some Steelers Thursday. I will be at Pitt, Tennessee on Saturday. And then I do the drive to Cincinnati Saturday night, and I'll be in Cincinnati for the Steelers opener on Sunday. So it's fun, man. A little bit of everything. It's that time of year. I love it. I absolutely love it. The weather's cooling down and the stories are heating up.
I do love me some fall weather in Pittsburgh. Thanks so much, Jason. You can follow this show, the North Shore Drive podcast, on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and, of course, YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit the like button on this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette's sports content right in your YouTube feed. I'm Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. I cover Pitt. Jason covers everything in the city of Pittsburgh. We'll be back Friday with a final look at the Steelers versus Bengals right here on the North Shore Drive podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the North Shore Drive podcast of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you're watching this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. For 6 months of digital access to post-gazette.com for just $6, click the link down below in the description.